listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician
podcast. Start this episode by shouting you out because you just played at a really cool venue in Minneapolis. Tell me about you've also just been playing a lot of shows lately, and I'm very impressed. Every time I go online, I'm like, cool, Rachel's doing awesome stuff.
Yeah, I'm playing bands that just book constantly. And then it's nice because I don't actually have to do any of the booking. I just show up and look at my calendar. But yeah, I played at First Avenue 7th Street Entry on Saturday night with my good buddy Clayton Ryan, Americana country soul artist, good friend of mine from college. And he got that gig through his manager. And we opened for a cool artist from Nashville named Kanan Cox. And it was, my biggest gig that I've played so far in terms of like a lot of people came and, it's a historic stage and everything. And the show went really well. Clayton did break one of the strings on my guitar at one point, which was a fun moment.
No.
We swapped guitars at one point, and it was right at the end of this song that we were doing. But we rolled with the punches, and he was so sorry, and I was like, dude, it's fine. Like, things
Did you have like a backup guitar, or you just change it really quickly?
I just took that string off. It was the A string.
That's my
just
Rachel.
Played without it. Yeah.
Yeah. The A string?
Yeah, it was rough for a little bit. I was just like, I'm just gonna play everything higher, and I did.
Well, all of that is really exciting, and it sort of leans into the conversation we're going to have today. But first, I should say, welcome to the DIY Musician podcast. Oh. This is Cristina and Rachel. You'll probably be able to tell the difference between us because I sound congested and Rachel doesn't. And this is not new for some reason. I've just had a season of this, and I apologize to our podcast listeners who have been listening to me battling various respiratory illnesses. So I'm fine. Don't worry, not dying yet. Well, I mean, we're all dying.
That's true. You were closer to death last week, and now you're doing a little bit better. So that's good.
I've also I've made it privy now. Last time I recorded an episode that it's we're recording this right now in May, but this may come out a little later. But I am like about a week away from having a child, which I know is like a secret I've been keeping on the podcast. If you've been like able to figure it out based on my mood or my looks or whatever, good for you. But
actors out there.
But yeah, it's out there now. So yeah, I'm excited we're having this conversation before I leave because I just this is like one of my favorite subjects. And also you've been, like I said, you've been playing all over the place in so many different bands. I've played in who knows how many bands. I've started bands, for my own songwriting initiatives. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to sort of like effectively start a band that nobody wants to quit, because it is so common that you're either in a band or you start one or whatever, and people fall out because of various reasons. And it can be, there's so many. I mean, it could be ego. It could be just like a conflict of interest, conflict of goals, conflict of creative and like the ways you approach creativity. It could just be that somebody's real douche. I don't know, like it happens. So we wanted to sort of like dissect how to avoid it as much as possible from either end of the spectrum, whether you're in a band or you are the person sort of running the show with the band.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm pumped to talk about this. I mean, I feel like I'm still, like I've been playing music for a long time, but I'm still, starting-ish in my career, I would say. And yeah, like I've had awesome situations with bands. I've had some really tough moments with bands. And I think what I'll probably come back to a million times during this is like communication and just like active, thoughtful communication is just so important. But there's lots of details we got to talk about too.
And honesty with yourself. I mean, that's part of communication, is knowing what it is that you're trying to say. I think I've lived so much of my youth was just living off the cuff and being like, I'm going to embrace every challenge that comes my way. I'm just going to like surf life, and like whatever happens, and that's great. But there were times where I definitely like approached a situation without communicating with the people that I was asking to be my collaborators, and that did create conflict later down the road because I wasn't using my words. I didn't really even know what my words were. I didn't establish like a vision for what this project was, or um and I think it's okay to experiment, and I think it's okay to be like, I don't know, but at least say that, to your band before you sort of start it. So that's where we're gonna start, which is, what is the goal of your band? So, a lot of people start a band obviously to play shows. Some people just wanna create an ensemble to record an album, record a song. Maybe it's to flush out ideas. Like, I've definitely just tried to get groups of people together because I'm like, I'm a singer-songwriter and I need to flush ideas outside of
Mhm.
myself. So, like, let's get together. Let's see what this could sound like live and how could that be like enhanced in the recording or in the arrangement or whatever. Is it to tour? Whether that's going to be locally, domestically, or internationally. Like, those are things that you should probably think about, right?
Totally, and I think it's worth acknowledging too that it's a good idea to check back in on this topic, like, regularly because these ideas can change over time, bands
Totally.
develop, and individual people in the band might have different goals about what they
Mhm.
wanna do with the band, and so if everybody's on the same page, then you can make good decisions together and not feel like you're not being heard.
Yeah, gut check. Gut check yourself and gut
Mhm.
check each other. I've definitely worked with people where, I wanted to work with a drummer and they said, "Well, I'm down for practices, I'm down for playing shows, but I'm not interested in going on tour." And that was sort of a deal breaker at the time, right? Because I really
Mm.
needed somebody who was willing to head out on the road. And I've been in other situations where they're like, "Yeah, I'm not really into practice, but I'll show up on the day of the show." And you're like, "That doesn't work for me. I need rehearsals."
I don't know
Um,
who that works for, but that's
yeah, I'm not gonna name names. But yeah, so what are you trying to accomplish with these players? You have to respect everybody's time. Um, that also means, like, setting up we'll go into this, I think, a little later too, but setting up, like, upfront expectations for, I'd like to play 6 shows a month or whatever, like, I'd like to
Mhm.
play 2 shows a month, and that means like, weekly rehearsals. Or, I only need to play 2 shows a year, and we can rehearse 4 times in the whole year. Like, things like that, setting those expectations up front so that they know what they're getting into, and again, you can gut check later, you can always do check-ins, but sort of, like, letting people know. And if you are a member of a band and this is not your, like, main you're not the main visionary of behind it, asking those things when you're
Yep.
joining something. Like, it's important that communication goes both ways, so it's not all on one
Yes.
person or yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to think about and consider that, maybe the person who is the creative visionary of the band hasn't considered those questions, right? So
Yeah.
it takes the group effort of thinking and asking the questions to find the way forward.
Yeah, I think, we're all creatives, and we know that it can get siloed in there, just like the
Yes.
chaos of thoughts. And sometimes thinking about just, like, considering the other people you're working with, something as simple as that can get, like, lost in your own mess of a creative brain, and that's okay. But that's why we're saying, like, just start every endeavor. And when we talk about this with album release, we talk about this with, like, any marketing campaign you do. What are your goals? Write them down. How
Mhm.
are we going to approach those goals? It's like 101. I think it's the DIY musician podcast, blog, newsletter 101 advice is
Yeah.
establish your goals up
Yes.
front first.
Yes.
Um, another thing that
Songwriting.
yeah, songwriting. Like, who's gonna be the songwriter of this band? Because you might be in a situation where you're the singer-songwriter and you want that to be known, like, and I've been in this situation. Hi, I'm Christina Cano. Siren in the Sea is my songwriting project. That being and I am, like, totally open to collaborate musically, sonically, like, arrangement-wise, live band-wise, and everything. But when it comes to like the ultimate say on what the recording will sound like, what I want the arrangement to sound like, I do take a lot of, like, control, and it took me a long time to be okay saying that because I just wanted to be cool and be like, "Oh, yeah, whatever."
Yeah.
But like, not having your words is not gonna help the people that you're working with because it can create issues. I definitely had a few of them. It's okay to say, this is my project for my songwriting, but I would really love your support, or I would really love if you guys could help me with arrangements. I could really love if we could be loose when it comes to how this sounds live, but in the studio, I'm going to have more control. It doesn't matter. You can have those perspectives. You just have to be able to like say them. And then on the other side of it, if you do want this to be a collaborative effort and you're the one bringing everybody together, it's important to say that as well. To say
Mhm.
like, yeah, I'm Rachel, yes, I want to build a band and like I'll do the legwork of finding players, but I think we should all have like an equal sort of collaborative effort in this. Like, let's all write songs together. Let's all jam together. This is like a everybody's responsibility thing.
Mhm.
That's important to also state out loud as well.
Yeah, I've been in both situations, played in bands that have done it both ways, and, collaborative songwriting is really, really cool.
Mhm.
It's also very hard to
So
pull off,
hard. I
and
don't
make
know
sure
how people
everyone's
do it.
ideas are being heard and, like,
Yeah.
being willing to try things that, like, in your head, it's like, "That doesn't sound like a good idea," but hearing it out loud, you might, think differently. So, yeah, again, constant conversation, but yeah, super cool songs can be written that way too, like, from getting everyone's heads together and figuring it out.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I've also been in both situations, and honestly, like, I have a hard time in like collaborative songwriting
Mm,
when it comes to like especially lyrically, when
yeah.
there's like a lot of lyrics and stuff, it's like I really think one person should be in charge of the vision here. But at the same time, there are so many successful bands that did have like multiple people get like giving that input. I mean, even just look at Fleetwood Mac, like you can tell the difference between like a song that like Stevie Nicks wrote versus Christina V, but like
Mhm.
and you can tell the difference, like, tonally and obviously vocally, but, it's still all very cohesive.
Yeah, I've coached at this women's rock camp here in the Twin Cities for a couple years, and what we do is we put people together. Some of them who've never played an instrument before, some who've like tried one instrument, but now they're like, "Oh, I want to try drums instead of bass or something," and they
Mhm,
write a song in 2 days,
mhm.
and that can be really tough to pull off. But a really good like lyric exercise that we sometimes do is like have everyone sit in a circle, each has a piece of paper, start by writing one line of lyrics and then pass to the next person. And
Yeah,
each one has to add on to what comes
that's
before.
fun.
They get like a minute each time. And even if like 50% of it is bad, you still have so much stuff to then pull from doing like a
Mhm.
couple rounds of just adding stuff to the sheet.
Totally, I love, like, exercises like that, creative
Mhm.
exercises. Um, okay, so we've talked about that songwriting, but also, what do you want this to sound like? Because I how do I say this? I think that there are players that are skilled at certain things,
Mhm.
that may be, like, the best player in your town, but that doesn't mean that they're the right player for your band.
Yes.
So, for example, if you know that Joe next door is, like, an excessively wonderful guitar noodler,
Yeah.
but you're playing, like, this other soft lo-fi whatever, like, is that appropriate? I don't know. Like, maybe it could be, and I think that there's also spaces where it's really cool to experiment with different types of performers or different types of players,
Mhm.
and to see, like, what comes out of that, but just making sure that like, sort of, again, set expectations for what it is that you're looking to create here, and how do you find the right people to fit that vibe?
Mhm. Yeah, like a similar thing would be, maybe you want to have like a jazz folk band with like really subtle drumming, thoughtful drumming, and you go find like a punk drummer that's just gonna
Mhm,
slam the shit out of the drums. Like that's it's not gonna sound very good. So yeah, that consideration is really important. And um, I also added on here too, like in regards to this, I think this is from my past life as a music teacher. But
Mhm.
in any way that you can like foster an environment of continuous learning and improvement, because like I consider myself like a lifelong learner of the guitar for sure.
Mhm.
And the people who the folks who think similarly about their instruments to that, I love playing with them because it's like they're so curious, they're like
Mhm.
nerdy, they're like looking up new techniques all the time.
Mhm.
And
Totally.
I met this incredible bass player named Barb Brinstad at Women's Rock Camp, and she plays in a band here called Turn Turn Turn. And she played bass in punk bands like in her 20s, and then took a break from music for like I think 20 years to start a family and follow her career. And then she kind of woke up one day and said, I don't think I ever got as good at the bass as I wanted to, and
Hmm.
so she started with this great teacher in town and practiced, like, literally 5 hours a day for, like, a year and got
Whoa.
absolutely incredible at the bass, and now she's, I believe she's in her 50s and is just the most killin' bass player, so, like, it's never too late to really focus on getting better and, improve, you know?
Totally, and to surround yourself with people that are like that is so inspiring. Like, I definitely have worked with people that can be a little checked out when it comes to learning new technique or really, like, honing their skill, and then I've worked with the complete opposite of that, where you just tell somebody, "Yeah, I've been thinking about this beat," and then they come to you with, like, weeks worth of research about,
Yeah.
like, the indigenous tribes that built this beat originally
Yeah.
in Colombia or whatever, and it's like, that is so impressive to me because I am not that detail oriented as a musician, and I don't do that kind of research, and so when I meet people like that, it inspires me to be better,
Mhm.
um, and I really appreciate that in people. So, yeah,
Be
no,
It
wait,
can be fun to play with people who are better than you always, you know?
always.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who worked, at CD Baby actually, who said a good manager is somebody that finds a team of people that are better at them at different things.
Mm,
So finding a group of people that all can do things that you can't do, that's what like a good leader does, I think. And
mhm,
I can't agree with that more. Like if I tried to control everything, then it's what's the point of having other people's skills, you know?
right.
And so having a group of people that they can take the reins and really like be the best at what they do, that and you can trust them, like, that's the most ideal situation, and trust is, like, the building block of building a band that no one wants to quit, I think, too, is, like,
Mhm,
to trust that you trust your drummer, you trust your bassist, you trust your guitarist, you trust your keyboardist, you know that everybody is gonna figure their shit out even if you only have 1 practice before that big show, like,
mhm,
you trust that you'll get on stage and it'll sound okay because everybody, like, has their shit together.
mhm.
That's, I think, pretty important. Um, Speaking of trust, I think
Yes.
that one of the things that people argue about the most, or can find themselves in, like, tricky situations is pay,
Mhm.
because it's time, like, none of this is like, no time is free.
Right,
Every
yeah, exactly.
time is money, babe. So setting expectations up front about how you're planning on paying people or how money is divided, um, not everybody needs to get paid for band practices, but maybe they absolutely have, like, the request or the expectation to get paid for shows,
Mhm.
um, those sorts of things. Like, I just think that having transparency, again, communication.
Yep.
I've seen success with people that set up, like, a band fund,
Mhm,
in advance even of putting the band together and saying, "Okay, I have $1,000 set aside. That $1,000 will pay or compensate members of the band, at shows where maybe we didn't make enough, but that way I know I can consistently pay everybody 50 bucks,
mhm.
for them playing that gig."
Yeah.
And whether you make that back or you, like, whatever, you add it back to the pool, like, you at least have, like, sort of a starting point and you're not wasting people's time, and, the more you do it, the more you play the shows, the more money you're gonna get, the more you're gonna, like, be on a roll with it, but, like, setting something aside, I have seen that work, and I think
Mhm.
that's pretty effective.
Yeah, the bands that I play in, we just have like a band Venmo account, and that's what people pay for merch with. It's
Hmm,
we tend to put the winnings from a show into that account and then split things up that way. But that actually just keeps everything so transparent. We all have access to that account. We can see our bass player in one of the bands is kind of our treasurer, and that
nice.
she like kind of handles the money stuff. Um, but yeah, like don't be a jerk and take a ton of the money from the show and then give your band like $1. Like that's pretty
No,
shitty.
that's so shitty. And again, like I've been on both sides of it. I've been in bands where I got paid the exact same amount for every show no matter what. It
Mm,
was like, and that was ideal for me, right? Like the lead singer maybe didn't take home anything because it was their project, but
mm,
they set a precedent up front that said you're going to get paid like something like $75 for any show in town and then like $150 for shows out of town or whatever, no matter what. And at the time, that was plenty. And to this day, honestly, that would be plenty for me. But and then I've been in situations where I'm the band leader and we've played a show that was mostly sold out. And as a band, we only made $17.
mm.
And and
Brutal.
that's not including merch and all those things. But like the way that I had done it in the past was since I'm the one that put the money into making merch, I would recoup merch sales by,
Sure.
you know, but then anything we made at the shows would get split evenly amongst the players. But when you get $17 for a show for like, 400 people or whatever, that is so shitty. And
Mhm.
to be able to say that's okay because I have this fund set up or we have like the resources to be able to pay everyone would
Sure.
be really great. So, um, yeah, money is challenging, and I think that, like, having one person who's really good at it in the group, absolutely ask that person, "Hey, are you willing to take on the mental work of doing the finances?" You know?
Totally. And I think it's important too to again check in often with the group about what kinds of gigs are you willing to
Mhm,
accept and pursue because um you'll get to a point where you should start saying no
mhm,
ideally and not be playing constantly in your local market because then you're also like taking away opportunities from other people too
mhm.
but it's actually something I need to flesh out more with the folks that I play with because it's like sometimes the vibes are off at a particular venue from another show that you've played before, and then you have to know, like, hey, y'all, I really don't want to play there again. The
Yeah,
booker is a creep, or like
or
whatever is
whatever.
going on,
Yeah,
and decide, are you willing to play a show that doesn't pay very well, but is like a pretty good opportunity for like who else you'll be playing with, or
yeah.
the exposure that you'll
I
get.
know. Exposure.
So
Exposure. Pay
yeah.
pay for exposure. Sometimes your bandmates are just like, "I just wanna have fun." And
Hmm.
I've been really lucky to have a lot of collaborators like that are like, "I don't need to get paid, man. We just do this for the fun." And I'm like, "How are you committing to weekly band practices with my songwriting and playing shows every other week, and you're just doing this for fun? Like, why?" And, I,
A
like, don't
zest for
believe
life.
that you could like my music like that, and yeah, so but hey, if that's what they feel like and they say, "You know what? I don't mind playing this festival in the middle of nowhere that's not gonna pay us because it's cool, it's in an orchard, and I'm probably gonna have a great story," that's
Mm,
great. But I still believe that, like, anybody who does work should get paid for it, so finding
agreed.
some way to compensate for people, even if it just means you buy everybody a personal size pizza, I don't know, something to say thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget you can write stuff off at the end of the year, you guys.
Heck yeah. Taxes.
But also set up a spreadsheet that shows every single thing you've ever paid for the band, as a band, who paid for it, what, every single piece of money that comes back to the band. So
Mhm,
you sold a sticker, that's cool, but you gotta put that in the spreadsheet.
mhm.
And yeah, we talked about this, in another episode, but important stuff. No matter who you are in it, don't try to be the ego, like, maniac. Don't steal all the spotlight. Like, yes, maybe you did 95% of the songwriting, and this is your backing band, these people matter, and they're putting their time and their energy and their talent into making you sound good. Do not steal all the spotlight.
Mm-mm.
Shout them out. Give them credit. Figure out what their songwriting split is. If they did contribute a hook that is like pretty stellar into that single that you just released, that probably deserves a songwriting credit, you know?
Mhm.
Or if you're playing a show, always take an opportunity to stop and say, "Let me introduce my band." Um, I also think it's important to introduce the sound guy and the lighting guy
Yes,
and
say thank
to
you.
say thank you to the venue and all those things, but
Say
you
tip your bar staff, you know? Yeah, shout everybody out.
absolutely. Everybody deserves it, but, like, your band definitely deserves it, and I don't know how many times, like, I've been in situations where I thought, "It would have been nice to have a shout out," you know?
Yep. Mhm. And I get it, like, sometimes people do forget, you know,
Mhm.
but,
Oh,
that
yeah,
it should
totally.
like, write it in the set list, literally. Like, this is where I will
Literally.
introduce people.
Yeah, or, like, I don't know, some people like to have a really loosey-goosey set list, and I do think sometimes it's important to have a note on your guitar or your keyboard or whatever that says, "Don't forget to say thank you."
Mhm. And mention merch.
And mention merch, and we're gonna
Yeah.
be out there and signing your stuff.
Mhm.
Um, that goes photo shoots, like, if you are gonna take pictures to send to press or to send to booking or whatever, have a conversation up front about who wants to be in those pictures, and, you know, how important it is to either showcase the whole band or to showcase just one person.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I think in Almost Famous, there's that, do you remember that movie?
I think I saw it a long time
Oh,
ago.
babe, you gotta watch it. That's like I based my entire identity off of it as a teen, so, and Almost Famous is that scene where they get, like, their T-shirts printed for the band, but, like, only one guy's face is in focus and everybody's face is, like, in the background, like, shaded out, and they get these T-shirts and they're so pissed. Yeah, just have that conversation because
Mhm.
that's not cool either. And that doesn't mean that you can't, again, like, be a s be the center of a band without also just, like, sharing, you know, your gratitude. I think one thing that's also important to note, like, as we're going through this is that there are, like, ways where you can have a rotating cast of band members. It can be
Mhm.
challenging to have to, like, take pictures every time or whatever. Maybe it just means, like, yeah, in the run of shows that we do in June, we're introducing Sierra on bass, so we're gonna feature her on our social media during that month just so that people
Mhm.
know, like, she's gonna be included in the band for that month. Maybe that's
Yeah.
just a temporary player, but, like, how can we feature this person? Yeah, and then other ways that people could avoid being egomaniacs. Interviews when
Mhm.
when people say, like, "How'd you come up with the concept?" And you know that, yeah, you brought, like, 3 lyrics to a band practice, but really the band helped come up with everything, and then you say, "I just toiled with it for years."
Oh my gosh. The worst.
Stuff like that.
Don't be that guy.
This one is a really important one. I think setting a consistent schedule for rehearsals is really important. So we, like, talked about
Mhm.
talking up front, right? About what you want it to be, but I don't know, like, in the bands that you're in, do you find yourself every week being like, "Hey, what day works for you guys?" in group text and then nobody responds?
I used to be in that situation with one of my bands, and I think I was the one to kind of put my foot down and say, "Y'all, like, I know that we usually practice on Sundays, but we change the time all the time. Can we
Mhm.
just decide on 4 PM? Like, that's if we had a gig the night before, we have time to sleep in a little bit, and then it's like
Yeah.
we get home before dinner kind of thing." And that's worked super, super, super well. And if people can't be there for whatever reason, you know, then we talk about maybe moving the time for that just that one Sunday, or doing a rehearsal without them if there's not like a big show coming up or something.
Effective communication,
Hell yeah.
asking for what you need, saying, "This isn't working for me. I need consistency." Super important.
Mhm.
I also think that's something you can talk about up front, but yeah, like things change or um, I think it's good too if you say we always meet on Sundays at 4 p.m. But things come up, right? Like you've got whatever, something to
Travel
do that day.
plans,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Um, deciding, do we continue with practice and just like not have our bassist for the day? Or do we skip this practice, give everybody a break? Um, and can we afford to skip a practice?
Mhm.
So like if you, again, it comes down to trust. I think if you have a consistent schedule and you're mostly keeping to it, if you miss one or two or three are there, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Trust each other. You know the songs, and if you don't, learn them on your own and show up and see what happens. Because
Mhm.
sometimes the best shows do happen unpracticed. I don't know. They just like magic.
Yeah, and regarding that too, like, deciding, if you're the band leader, are you expecting folks to work on stuff outside of practice
Mhm.
and then rehearsal is really just like runs of things instead of like stopping to figure out or like making tons of mistakes all the time? Like both are fine, I feel
Mhm.
like. But man, when I was in music school, like the expectation was practice all your stuff outside of rehearsal, and rehearsal is when we're gonna like tighten everything up basically.
Mhm.
And that was so efficient because we played all the time. We played concerts like constantly in music school, so we had to just be like super on top of stuff. But like I prefer to do that for myself just because I like to feel relatively prepared and like, say you have two rehearsals before this big show and then the one before the show gets canceled for whatever reason, like people get sick or whatever is going on. Like if you can feel pretty good, like two practices ahead of the show instead of one practice before the
Yeah.
show, everyone just feels better, I think. Like vibes are
Yeah, for
better.
sure. I also did learn though through just like years of doing it, but also through theater that the rehearsal right before the show can often be the worst one. I don't
True,
know
you
what
get
it
it out of your
is.
system.
Yeah, like there's sometimes it's like I've left band practices being like, this is gonna fucking suck. This is gonna be the worst show I've ever had. Um, I'm pissed at myself because I didn't prepare enough. I'm pissed that I didn't like set a precedent for what this rehearsal was supposed to be. People were smoking way too much pot and they weren't
Mhm,
focused and we just
mhm,
needed to get through stuff and it was like hurting cats or whatever. And then you get to the show and it ends up being fantastic because you had all that practice up front before this one like really bad rehearsal.
mhm.
Or in theater it was like always like tech week. You would always, no matter what project I've ever been on, it would be like in tech week everybody is convinced that this show is absolutely off the rails and that there's no saving it, and then the night of happens and magic appears, and I just truly believe in that magic. I don't know what I've carried that with me through everything I've done. Is sort of
Yeah.
the last minute understanding that it may not make sense in the last minute, but it will come together. Like even the conference, the DIY musician conference, it was a lot of things to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And at the last minute, I was like, there's so many loose ends. You get into this like crazy chaos mode, and then
Mhm.
things fall together because you have to trust that people know what they're doing, and generally they
Yes.
do.
Yes. Yes, you
Um,
don't have to do everything yourself and you have support to help.
Asking though or setting boundaries or setting a precedent for what the rehearsal should look like is also helpful. Like
Totally.
if you because there are rehearsals I think where it's fun to bring in new ideas and say, we're going to spend like an hour of this rehearsal just flushing out an idea. I have this new song idea and I'd like to hear what you guys come up with. And then we'll take a break. And then after that break, maybe we come in and we run the set list like once or twice. Um,
Mhm.
Something like that I think is helpful because that says, let's like have some like ideation loosey goosey time where we just play, we have fun. Like let's get into the groove of it. And then we can like get into strict mode. Maybe it's the other way around. Or also just saying what it is that you do and do not feel comfortable with at rehearsal. Because, like I
Mhm.
said, I've definitely been in situations where everybody got too loose, and and you're like, yes, this is a hang, but on the other hand, this is also work. So how do we? Well, it's work, but it's you know what I mean. One of the most positive experiences though that I've ever had in a band practice was when I let go of control.
Mhm.
And I had a new song. I played it for everybody. I was really, like, low and moody and sort of slow. Um, we took a break, and I came back from the break, and I was, like, outside or something. I came back inside, and my band was playing the song, but they were just messing around with it, and they were playing it like a disco song,
Hmm.
like, all of a sudden, and, I stood there for a few minutes thinking, like, This isn't what I was going for," in my head at first, like, This is not what I wrote," But then I was like, "This is actually pretty sick," and so I just started playing, and we played for, like, 30 minutes riffing on it. I didn't sing or anything, we just played the song and realized, "Nah, this is the new song. This is the direction of the song," and so what we did was we start the song off, the first verse is, like, this low and moody thing, and then it flips into this disco song, and it's on my record that way now. Like, that is exactly how we played it live, that's how I recorded it. It like, you have to trust you brought these people together for a reason. You didn't bring them together to just execute your vision.
That's so sick. I love that story.
Thanks. Thanks. I liked what you said here, about practicing in the circle, which is always how I would practice, but also practicing facing out like you're about to play the show.
Yeah. This is again something from women's rock camp. Like, it's funny how when you get folks together in a band for the first time, you have to really condense like everything into writing the song and preparing for the show that they play at the end of the weekend. And the band that I worked with this year, they actually had the idea on their own. They're like, we've been having this like fun circle thing, but like we're not going to be looking at each other this much at the show. So let's turn around.
Totally.
Let the drummer look at our butts for a little bit and like pretend like we're actually doing the thing. And that's super helpful for me because like when I practice in the circle the whole time and then we go play the show, I'm like, oh, I'm out in front of everybody and I can't
Mhm.
see everyone the same as before. So yeah, do it the real way as much as possible.
It's also super LA to do it in front of mirrors. I saw, like, what was it,
Mm,
King Princess or something posted once, like, doing one of their practices, like, in front of a full wall of mirrors, like you're a dance
mm,
rehearsal, basically. So
yeah,
you can see what it looks like, and you can see how awkward it is when you hold your arms or whatever. Um, so,
totally.
yeah.
What's that? I forget the the coach that came to DIY Con and did like his band workshop.
Tom Jackson,
Tom Jackson, yeah, I'm sure he's got
real
some thoughts
character.
about that too, yeah.
He is full of really, really great advice when it comes to how to, like, turn your performance just into something, captivating. So,
More
what
engaging.
you think is like, "I'm just gonna wing we're just gonna wing it, we're just gonna have fun, whatever." It is even just, like, having a moment where this is the part of the song where I turn to the guitar player, we make eye contact or whatever. This is the part of the song where I step away from the mic and I, like, play the guitar like, things like that, which at first, you're like, "There's no way I'm gonna choreograph all of this stuff." But
Right.
then you watch him sort of transform a performance of a song. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, that's what practice is for, is setting up those
Mhm.
moments. I've definitely had um, different iterations of bands where I wanted to be more theatrical, and so I'd say, "Okay, at this point, even though we have done 0 choreography up to this, in this one song, I think it'd be really funny if we all not funny, but interesting if we all just, like, turn to the left at this one part," Just
Yeah.
things that catch people off guard a little bit, when they're watching.
Yeah, delight the audience as much as
Mhm.
you can. I mean, they came out to see you,
Yeah,
entertain them, and give you their art. You give
totally.
them your art. Yeah, there we go.
And setting boundaries when it comes to performing. So, like rehearsing, knowing what your expectations are. So, you know, there's some no-brainers, like show up to sound check on time.
Yes.
Don't be the guy that keeps forgetting gear. You're at sound check and now you have to go run back home and pick up your amp because you forgot it and you do this every time.
Our bass player has, in one of my bands, an emergency bag with, like,
Smart.
capos, cables,
Amen.
random things, and they just keep it in their car, and if we ever need something, we go grab it from there.
That is so smart, but keep it hidden in your car because I have had that
Yes.
bag stolen before.
Yeah.
It also goes back to the beginning, which is sort of how you want to look as a
Yes.
band on
Mhm.
stage at shows. Um, it can feel if you're the leader, it can often feel like, well, I don't want to like make people conform
Mhm.
to some idea I have. But for example, you just played this show at First Ave with this artist, and the first thing I noticed in the pictures was they both match and they look amazing. And I'm sure you had to have a conversation about how are we dressing up for the show, right?
We did, yeah. Clayton was like, "Dude, I think suits would be super cool. Like, do you have a suit?" And I said, "Yes, I have a black suit." And he's like, "Yes, let's both wear black suits, and I will let you borrow my bolo tie." And I was
Mm,
like, "Yes." And so yeah, and I'm so glad that the photographer for the band we were opening up for was like, "Hey, you want some pictures? You look really good." Because we didn't hire a photographer for that night. They just offered to do that. But yeah, that just helps with cohesion for
mhm,
the audience to like catch a vibe. Like, what kind of thing are they going to be listening to?
mhm,
Uh, is there like a typical uniform for your genre of music?
mhm.
Like, you played like Americana country music, bolo tie, boom, makes sense.
Sure.
Um, is there a particular like color scheme that you want to follow? It's worth having that conversation for sure.
Yeah, and that can shift, like, project to project that you're promoting. I had an album where Um, we did a lot of projections on stage, so we had the band wear white. Everyone in the band except for me wore white. I would normally wear sequins, but everyone would wear white so that when the projections came on, it would be, like, on their cool suits. That being said, sometimes it's like you're literally just playing in an orchard and you don't want to have to do all the bells and whistles, and you could just
Yeah.
say, "It's August."
Right. Are you playing outside in July or August? Like,
Yeah.
please don't wear a full suit or something
Is
hot.
yeah, like, if this is a party, like, we don't
Yeah.
need to everybody be dressed up the same. So just being, like, flexible, but also setting those precedents up front and saying, "This is my expectation is that we're gonna sort of be a band that wears cohesive outfits." Setting an expectation, like, about especially when it comes to booking, oftentimes, like, one person gets stuck with all of that work, but it's still,
Mhm.
like, managing everybody's schedules. Having, like, an expectation, "Hey, if I send a group message about, 'Does this date work for you?'" You'll respond by, like, at least 24 to 48 hours later, and not
Mhm.
like, I have to ask you a week later. That's
Yeah.
you
It's
know?
very frustrating
So
to have to, like,
frustrating.
track someone down that way. Yeah, I've been felt really lucky with the bandmates that I've had about, communication, especially regarding booking, because 'cause I've heard some horror stories and miscommunications and someone double booking themselves or whatever, and then you're, like,
Yeah.
scrambling to figure something out in the moment.
Yeah, I was in a band, and one of the band members double booked and showed up to the 2nd set, which was my set, um, ran through the audience onto the stage and jumped on stage and started playing, and that was cool, but, please don't do that all the time.
Oh my gosh, a heart attack,
So
goodness.
stressful. Yeah, we were just like, "I don't know if he's gonna make it, but we're still gonna play it." Don't hoard all the drink tickets,
It's just a
be
jerk
be
move, like, come on.
respectful, like, don't black out before you play.
Yeah.
I know this sounds, like,
Obvi
controlling, but it also sounds like old school, but I've
Sure.
had these experiences more recently than not. Not in my band, but in bands I've been in where somebody just hit the sauce too hard and, like, they're dozing off on stage.
Yikes.
And that's really hard to deal with because you don't know how to have that conversation. I don't
That
know.
for me is an immediate, "You're out, I'm sorry," like, for me, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, same. Um, what else? Oh, learn the songs.
Learn the dang songs.
But also guilty, like, I too will need cheat sheets. Like, I too, for my own songs, will have stickers on my keyboard that say, like
Mhm.
all it is just, like it'll just say, like, G flat, or whatever, like, E, blah, 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 verse,
Yeah.
chorus, C, G, like, whatever, and that's all I need because it's just, like, my brain don't remember.
Yeah,
My brain don't work good.
I'm always writing on my set list, like, what key is the song in? Is there a capo on this one? Because I will forget. Did I tune to drop D and then a reminder to tune back out of drop D for the next song? 'Cause I can't tell
Mhm.
you how many times I've, like, tried to play in drop D when the song's not in drop D, and it's
Oh,
really
that's right when it starts.
freaking rough, yeah.
Yeah, and the more bands you're in too, man, like, juggling all
Mhm.
of these things, it seems totally doable, but then at the show, you're like, "Oh, wait, this is a different band song." I'm trying to
my
play right now.
keyboardist in one of my bands, she has a huge binder because she plays in lots of different bands, and it's, like,
Yeah.
segmented off by band, and she's got charts in there. It's very smart.
Yeah, very smart. And then same things apply when it comes to recording, sort of communicating upfront about what the goals are for the studio, I think is important because just like practice, sometimes for some people, going into the studio is sort of like an opportunity to come up with ideas, or to flush out. Like maybe they'll come in and the song is about 75% of the way done, but they
Mhm,
want to go into the studio, see what happens, see what we're going to add to it. And I
mhm.
really enjoy that process personally because I really like Brian Eno says the studio is like your blank canvas, and I
Yeah.
agree with that. But
It's
also been
expensive.
in projects. Yes, it's expensive, it costs money for that engineer. Um, if that's not the plan and you just show up like, "I'm gonna wing it," and everybody else is rehearsed and you're spending 3 hours just coming up with parts on the fly, people are gonna get pissed.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, like, figuring out, are you like, for example, my band recorded an EP last year, and, we had 3 songs to do, and we decided we have this much money, and we can afford 3 days in the studio with this engineer, and, uh, we thankfully had everything, like, very well figured out beforehand, like, we had practiced to clicks a bunch, and we were, like, ready to go, um, but it still took more time to figure
Mhm.
out, like, exact tone settings for the guitar and like which mics did we want to put on the trumpet and which mic do we want to use for vocals and stuff like that. All that already takes more time too.
Mhm.
Um, and we ended up using some amps that were in the studio instead of ours because it just sounded so much better. They're like
Yeah,
expensive boutique amps.
totally.
But yeah, talking about are you going to use the gear at the studio? Are you going to bring all your own stuff? How's that going to work? Be really prepared. And also like then the engineer I think will be happy to work with you again in the future too if you're prepared to come in.
Yeah, and if again, if like this is more of a, well, we're gonna pay you for the time of us just sitting around and coming up with ideas, that's fine. You have to communicate that to your engineer so they're
Mhm.
not thinking, okay, well, are we keeping this or are we not?
Um, if you are feeling good about how a song is sounding in rehearsal and you can play through the whole thing, get
Yeah,
a scratch recording of it
for sure.
because then people can take it home and work on stuff, listen back and like
Always.
realize like, oh, maybe something is not quite working there. I want to try this instead. And then put all those in like a Google folder.
Or if you got something in like that one rehearsal you remember that was Tuesday from April and we all had like we were really on it and we haven't been able to hit it since, you can go back and listen and figure out the mechanics of why that worked.
Yeah, totally. Curious what you have to say on like learning how to break up with a bandmate in that
Mm.
like how have you handled that in the past and how's that
Not
gone for you?
not good.
How not to do it with Christina.
Yeah, how not to do it is more than my book title. I think, with bands and people I dated in the past, I used to just avoid the confrontation, not avoid confrontation, but I would acknowledge the confrontation was there, and then I would put it in their hands to deal with it. It's not
Yeah.
good. I was not very good at that. And I've been on both sides of it. Definitely been in a band where the creative director of the band decided this was no longer the backing band they wanted. And we showed up to band practice one day and they said, "Hey, we're going into this next record. I know you guys have all been working on it with me, but I don't really want you guys anymore."
Brutal.
And they wrote us a check, and
At least
that
there's
was
that.
that was nice for our
Yeah.
time, and that was it, and it stung, but at the same time, I was like, "I get it." Like, I've that was more direct than I've ever been with somebody.
Mhm.
I've definitely been in situations where it just isn't working out. It's controlling or, there's, like, an intensity between us, maybe we're not communicating effectively or things just we aren't vibing,
Mhm.
um, and I don't know how to tell them it's them, or I don't know how to tell
Yeah.
them, like, I don't wanna play with them anymore, but they've been a part of this band now for, like, 2 years, so how do I do that without hurting their feelings?
Mhm.
I don't know. I think the best thing to do is just to say, I don't know that this is creatively working for us.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. It takes a level of courage that
Yeah,
yeah, if anyone else out there has a really good example of breaking up with somebody in your band, let us know because I'm really bad at it. I think at now in my at this point, I would feel more comfortable. But
sure.
when I was starting out, I definitely did not know how to use my words and I just let them.
Yeah, I'm very curious to hear if anybody has had it go well. I mean, I think ultimately, like, you can't control no matter how nicely you put it, no matter how
Mhm.
well you try to communicate, you can't really control how someone else is gonna react to
I know.
that whole situation, but ultimately, it's better for both parties
Yeah.
if the conflict is just, like, "Done. Let's not deal with this anymore. We shouldn't be collaborating together."
It's also okay to not let it get to that point too.
Right.
Like I don't know. I remember starting out having a hard time even just like auditioning someone to be in the band because I felt like, oh, well, they came all this way. I should offer it to them. And it's like, no, that's not, that goes back
Yeah,
to like making sure you're picking the right people
that's people
or, maybe they've come to 3 practices and it's just not working out. It's okay to say, "You know what? I think I'm gonna go in a different direction." I've gotten that rejection so many times from, like, some bands that I really wish I was still in because they're
Mm,
big now, and I and I get it, like, I wasn't the right fit, and that's okay, and do I have resentment about it? Not really, but, it is what it
yeah.
is. I
Mhm,
get it. And
mhm.
also be honest with yourself. Did you bring your best version of yourself to this band? Were you really coming to practices prepared? Were you really bringing like fresh, innovative ideas, or were you just regurgitating what they asked you to do? Like, just be honest with yourself if you do find yourself in that situation and recognize that sometimes it isn't about you. Maybe it's just they decided that they wanted to get a drum machine. you know,
Yeah, they wanted AI to do it.
they wanted AI to do it. Um, yeah, be open to changing your mind.
I had a couple more thoughts about just some actionable tips for communication. Having a shared band calendar, it has been like life changing for one of my
Mhm.
bands. Like we put everything on there, like the shows obviously we're going to play once they're booked, but also our unavailability. Like this is the week I'm going to be on vacation, or like I have another show this night. Please don't try to book something
Yeah.
for this. So calendar, and then I really like using Discord with one of my bands.
Hmm.
We have a Discord server set up for us, and we have different channels for different topics. Like we have a merch channel, we have a band practice channel, a goofy shit channel, like
Oh,
just like memes we want to send each other and stuff. And it really helps us like stay organized with the conversation and not having everything in one single text group chat.
totally. Yeah, that's helpful. I don't know. Be cool that not every show needs to sound the same or not
Yeah,
every practice needs to go the same. Just be cool. Remember why you're doing this. Like, chances are you're doing this because you love music. Chances are. That's why you're doing
yeah,
it. Chances are you're doing this because you want to play with other people. Like, I really, really love practice more than any other part of play. Well,
hmm,
not more than being on stage. I like being on stage more. But practice is my one of my favorite places to be
hmm,
because it's fun. I get to hang out with my buds and we get to just make music and sometimes I wish that people could hear the practice more than they could hear the
right,
recordings because those are like where the magic really happens. So remember why you're doing it. Remember to be flexible. Um, don't steal all the hot air out of the room. Try not to control everything. Be open to sharing.
yeah. Just be. I feel like some of this overlaps from our staying healthy on tour episode.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
being considerate of others is
Mhm.
like the number one thing that would ideally help you avoid stealing money and drink tickets from your bandmates.
Yeah.
Yeah, just be thoughtful.
Yeah. Um, I think that's it. We're gonna leave it
I think
there.
so too.
Just I'm supposed to say hit like and subscribe.
Yeah, review us on Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars. I think that actually does help. So yeah, if you're willing to do that,
Okay.
whatever.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.